Are you trying to win more loads while also lowering your cost per load? Do the conventional methods like hiring a bunch of grads and filling them with nicotine pouches and energy drinks not work? Well, then you should seriously consider investing into some automation technology like Levity to get rid of your repetitive admin work and make your sales go gangbusters. Back in the day of American backhaulers, everybody was used to doing business with a phone, pen, and paper. By now, we at least have email. Isn't that great? But the world has changed, and in this new world, everyone eventually needs to adapt or risk going out of business. So how is it possible that we have this while you're still working like that? Everybody is talking about AI these days, but nobody really knows what it actually means or how to use it for something tangible. We're here to change that. Imagine a world where your inbox is your ally, not your enemy. Levity seamlessly connects to your inbox, TMS, CRM, and other systems, analyzing incoming emails and attachments. It classifies them, extracts critical information, and automates tasks like providing instant spot quotes to shippers or answering track and trace requests. No more copy-pasting, no more manual data entry, just pure, unadulterated efficiency. We're going to take your productivity to the next level. Anyways, if you're watching this video and were one of the lucky people that got one of these limited edition masterpieces, congratulations! But even if not, don't worry. Just book a 30-minute meeting with us so we can demonstrate how Levity can help you win more business and lower your cost per load. And you'll get one of the 100 remaining gongs, but you gotta act fast. And here's the kicker, our Gong Big or Gong Home offer. If you decide to become a customer, I'm hereby promising you to get your large version of our gongs with your company logo and personally delivered to your office. Put that gong down. Gongs are for closers only. You think I'm fucking with you? I'm not fucking with you.
I think that was the best intro we've had so far.
Yeah, dude, like the gong, the usage of gong in sentences is the best part, I think.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty damn good.
That was really good. I honestly think that was like the best freight tech or even freight related like advertising.
Yeah, probably.
I've ever seen. So shout out to you, Thilo, and the Levity team for creating that.
Shout out Thilo. So everyone who's listening, thanks for showing up. Obviously, we're here for another Freight Caviar webinar. This time we're joined by Thilo from Levity AI, co-founder, and we're here to talk about why you shouldn't buy AI software for your brokerage. We hinted at in the video, everyone's talking about AI, but nobody really knows what the heck it means, and everyone's trying to shove it down your throat and sell it to you. So here's a bunch of reasons why you shouldn't do that. So I'm going to kick it over to Thilo. I don't know why I keep saying Thilo. Sorry, Thilo. And we got Paul here, obviously. So let's get into it, guys.
Yeah. So we're going to start off with a quote from Dan. I'm not trying to pronounce the last name, but AI and freight is like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it. So everyone claims they are doing it. I think this is like, Thilo, shout out to you for actually crossing out the big data and putting AI and freight. It's a great way to put it, and I think it's a topic that a lot of people maybe misunderstand or don't know where to start, and so that's something that we're going to be discussing in today's webinar. So here's what we will be going over. We're going to be discussing for the next hour, and each segment is going to take around 15 minutes or so. And the first one is the 7 reasons why you should not buy AI software for your brokerage. Then we're going to go into like how to identify, quantify, and prioritize automation opportunities. We're going to showcase 2 real-world examples and then have a Q&A section. And yeah, looking forward to diving in here deeper. And I'll let you, Thilo, take it away now.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. I guess the participants can also put in questions while this is ongoing, right?
Yes, you could. Yep. So if anyone's listening and they have any questions, please write in the comments section and we will go over them during the Q&A section.
Cool. Yeah, let's jump right in, right? So general topic, you already introduced it. There are a bunch of reasons why you should not get into AI yet, and we see them every day, right? Because people are interested, people are, feel like they have to do something and they have to get into this, right? But we actually know about a lot of prerequisites that you have to put in place first, or things that you need to sort out first before it actually makes sense to get into AI, right? First and foremost, you need to have an actual pain that can be solved with AI, right? Just because others do it, or because it's cool, or because it's trendy, that's nowhere close to reason enough, to do something like that, right? You need to have a clear pain, and a big pain where you know that AI is either the best or the only solution to solve it, and clearly identify that. So if you know, hey, I have this problem and it can be solved by AI, then you're already one step ahead of many that just want to do it for the sake of it.
Tilo, I'm curious, do you often get people hitting you up, or you basically figure out that they're hitting you up because everyone else is? Like they haven't really thought through the reasons, and they're just kind of like, hey, this sounds like a good idea, I'm here,
I don't think it's a big chunk. I would say maybe 10-20% of the people that we talk to are in that phase. And there's also levels to it, right? Some of them know that they have somewhat of a pain, but they need to go deeper into it, understand if it's how big it is, and if AI is the best solution. But others are really just kicking tires and saying, hey, show me what's
sure.
right? So if you're still in that stage, I think you should first identify something very clear where you say, hey, I know that this can be solved with AI. I want to solve it, and it's a big pain for the organization, basically.
Tilo, what would you say is like the biggest pain that AI could solve right now for a brokerage?
Well, I'm obviously biased, right? But the things that we do are very much automation, right? There are other areas like fraud prevention, where companies like Genlogs, for example, are doing a great job and they're leveraging AI, right? But I think in our case, you're closer to actually using AI yourself. And AI can mean many things, right? I think a lot of people might just know things like ChatGPT, and they think that's all there is to AI. But actually, you need to be way more clear about, okay, I'm using this specific type of AI for this specific type of use case to achieve this outcome. Whereas, just typing along with ChatGPT is nowhere representative of what's actually going on in these kinds of implementations.
Got it. Okay. So the first reason not to buy AI is that, like, if you don't have a problem, like, you don't do it. Okay, so that's reason number one. Let's jump on over. Or anything else to add to that?
Kind of a truism, right? But some people just want to do it because it's cool, right? So, yeah.
Okay. So, reason number two.
Yeah. Even if you have a problem, right, it might not be big enough, right? And that could either be because your business overall is just too small, right? So we've also talked with really, really small brokerages, like sub 20 people, for example, right? And they have the same problems oftentimes, but it's just not at a volume yet where it would make sense to put the time and resources in and do these kinds of things if you're just getting your business off the ground, right? So I put a little bit of a back of the envelope calculation there. If you're moving 1,000 loads, which is already quite a lot, right? And let's say you're able to automate about $5 worth of operational costs on that. I'll have a little bit more of an elaborate calculation in the examples later. You're only, quote unquote, saving $5,000 a month, while setting up the AI solution might cost you up to $10,000 in terms of software you're using, consulting time spent by your team, and then you might have ongoing costs of $2,000 a month. If that is the calculation, if that is the math, then you're only really break even after 4 months, and that's a long time, right? And eventually you get like a 2.5x ROI, which is pretty good, but you need to have the time and the cash to do these kinds of things. And if you're still somewhere in the low hundreds of loads, it might just be a little bit too early for you.
Okay. That's still not that bad though. Like, even if, like, let's say you're moving 1,000 loads per month, if you're breaking even after 4 months and then you're continuously saving $3,000 a month, that's still a great deal, but it does require having that cash upfront and paying for it.
Yeah.
So it is an investment, and if you're a much larger brokerage, you're able to see those returns immediately, basically. Okay, got it. So
Yeah, so
let's go.
just to maybe give one example, right? We were talking to one brokerage. They started out with a really small team. I think it was the president plus 3 people, right? But he said, hey, let's touch base again in 6 months from now. We have big growth plans. And now he's at 25 people, right? And he said, hey, now it's actually getting interesting, right? And we already talked about what he wanted to do. So, keeping it in the back of your head, but also being very, strict about the math and the ROI, because if you do it too early, you'll just put a bunch of money on something that's not going to return very quickly for you.
I'm curious. Do people, when they show up, do you think many of them have already done that kind of napkin math around the cost, their cost per load, and how this might affect it?
Yeah, I think some have, not everyone, because you obviously know your numbers, but the way that AI software pricing works, for example, or what will be required for the implementation in terms of, time spent by your team or time spent by someone else's team in consulting, right? That's usually the part that people are not aware of. So they might know, oh, I can save, I don't know, $2,000 a month, but I don't know what it will cost me to put up that sort of automation and maintain it. And I think that part is usually what they're trying to figure out, and also when they're coming to us.
That makes sense.
All right, let's go to reason number 3.
Yeah, third reason. This is also something that is obvious if you talk about it, but sometimes people don't realize it. It's not something you can just do on the side, right? It's not like you can just say, oh yeah, we're also doing AI now, and it's like purchasing some piece of software and then forgetting about it. It's really something that needs to be owned by someone that is spending time, but also just dedicating themselves to being the person for that topic, right? Doesn't mean that it has to be someone full-time only doing that, but someone who really is, the point of contact, building up also their own expertise around it, and making sure that everything that's needed from the team and from the organization to make such a project happen, that it goes through them and that they're pushing it forward, right? Because if there are multiple sort of owners of this, there are actually no owners. It's not going to get there. So we've seen that a couple of times where people started out and then realized, oh, it's not getting anywhere. Who actually owns this? And then someone stepped up and said, hey, you know what? I'm taking this. I'm the AI person now, and I'm gonna drive these things forward.
Will this individual be someone that's more technical or more operational?
I think it's better for them to be more operational, because those are the questions that they need to answer, right? They need to be very deep into what's going on in the business day to day. How are people doing things, right? And let the vendors, if you consider buying something, let them figure out the technical bits, right? It's obviously helpful to be technical, right? But unless you're building your own stuff, I don't think it's a necessity.
And that's a good thing for the brokerage, because they don't have to bring on someone that's technical. They just bring on someone that's from the operations team.
Is this like a requirement that you have to onboard somebody or to work with a customer? Like, do you say to them like, hey, you need this, or else it's just not going to be worth it for you? It's going to be a headache for everybody. Like,
I would say most of the times it develops naturally, but for example, we were doing like proof of concept or pilot phases with companies, and during that period, either it's already the person reaching out saying like, hey, I'm the person doing this at this company, or throughout the process we say, hey, by the way, you need to appoint someone for when this goes live to be the person that manages it, right? And then they say, oh yeah, I don't know, John can do it, and then John is like, okay, cool, let's do it. But you need to have someone who wears that hat and is the point of contact.
Makes sense.
All right, reason number 4.
Yeah, You probably know that scene from SpongeBob. You know, if everything's still super chaotic, and I would say it's highly correlated to being early as a company. Sometimes it's not. We've also seen very chaotic companies. But if you don't have any good SOPs yet, right, where everybody is following the same kind of process, it's also very difficult to translate that into automations, for example, right? Because sometimes one person does things in one way, then you have another person doing things in another way, and then you do it differently depending on customer, and you know, all these different edge cases. It's not possible to get rid of every single edge case just because of the nature of the business, but you need to standardize where possible, right? And then based on that, you can also better identify which of these processes are actually possible to automate and which are not, right? But as long as you don't have that visibility, you're pretty much incapable of adopting any technology for this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like if a broker doesn't have like the processes in place, so that it's actually like forces them to kind of level up in a way. Because if you read a lot of business books, everyone's like, you have to have processes in place. And like, if you don't have that, then you want to get AI, you kind of have to create that, which is good. It levels up your business, not only with the processes, but then also with having AI being part of that function.
I would be curious, like, what the general like state of of processes is within brokerage, brokerages that approach you all. Like, do you see everyone's all over the place, or do you see folks tend to be more dialed in?
I think the larger the company, the more dialed in things are, just because if you're hiring 100 people a year, right, then you need to be able to onboard them as quickly as possible, right? So if you don't have that training material, if you don't have those SOPs, that organization would have stalled out in their growth or just be completely broken way earlier in their journey. So I think, if companies reach a certain size, they just have to have that. But I think it's better than many people think, right? Even if it's just a simple Google Doc laying out, hey, if this happens, step one, do that. Then if this happens in that sub process, do things like that, right? Consider these things, put stuff like that into the TMS, and just verbalizing it in a single place so that either a person can go through it and be onboarded as a new operations person, right? Or using it as a baseline to say, hey, actually, this part of the process isn't that automatable. Let's do something about it, right? As long as you haven't done that, it's very difficult, right? Because there's no common understanding of how things should be done, actually.
Yeah, definitely. All right, reason number 5.
Yeah, it's a little bit connected. So to standardization, it's also a very simple example, right? If you don't have a central place to determine your rates, for example, right, and it's all over the place, it's spreadsheets, it's people checking that, it's all sorts of things, then it's also very difficult to, for example, automate parts of your quoting process, right? Because you don't even know where to get a rate. So oftentimes we're then talking to these companies, and I think a lot is happening in that space, right? Look at the likes of green screens, for example, right? There's a reason green screens exists, and we're seeing companies kind of leveraging multiple resources and then saying, hey, by the way, we want to check this load board, we want to check our historical rates, we want to check green screens, and then we want to build a weighted average. But it's a clear set of tools that they have in place where AI then can tap into and say, hey, by the way, I got this new load, it has these details, give me a rate, right? Whereas if you don't have that, and it's, again, non-standardized, or you just don't have a way to tap into this tool, then it's, you can't do anything about it, right? You can't automate it as long as you haven't figured that part out.
So like essentially, if you don't have like, data tools, for example, like green screens, or you don't have like tracking software, or you don't have the right TMSs, like there's no way to like kind of connect the AI to like help out. It's like it's a missing tool. So okay, got it. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Reed,
the next
Yeah, go
reason
on.
is also sort of the same, sort of connected to that, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
even if you have the tools, it makes a big difference what kind of tools you have, right? If you have a really outdated legacy system with bad connectivity, difficult integration process, or sometimes we've seen providers charge horrendous amounts just for API access, which is just
Yeah.
not something that you should be doing in this day and
Yeah.
age. Versus newer players that say, hey, we're very open, we have an open API, it's properly structured, latest standards, very modern. Well, then you will have an easier time to adopt other tools like AI tools as well, because they are going to tap into your existing system infrastructure, right? So if that is shit, you're not going to have a great time. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Is there? I mean, there's still so many legacy TMSs out there. I feel like. I mean, do you find that there are like that it's necessarily true that just because they're a legacy provider that it means they're difficult to work with, or have some of the legacy providers been pretty good to work with for y'all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some correlation, right? If something is 30 years old, it's going to be more difficult than something that's freshly built a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Then at the same time, the freshly built ones might not have all of the features, right, that you need in order to make the switch. So it's I don't think it's a black and white discussion there. And some of the older players are also pretty solid, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say it's black and white in that sense. You just need to kind of, again, assess in the context of the use case that you're looking at. Does my system infrastructure actually support this, right? So you're coming from the SOP, you're saying, hey, in this workflow or in this process, these 5 tools are involved. What's the connectivity to those tools if we're going to do it in a more programmatic way, right? If you're not going to click buttons, but tap into APIs, for example.
Mm-hmm. And will you guys take on, like, I assume you get approached by brokerages who use everything under the sun, right? And you guys take on those integration tasks, I assume, pretty frequently?
Yeah, exactly. So we build our platform in a very flexible and modular way so that, it can be connected to any type of API in a very quick and easy way. And at the same time, we have also our people there, right, that are helping these brokerages with onboarding. So they're going to actually sit with them in a call and ask them, hey, can you show me your SOP? Can you draw out that process for me? Okay, let's translate that into making that connection to your system. And then we're also, managing basically that connection to the TMS, for example.
Got it. Yeah.
All right. Final reason, number 7.
Yeah, somewhat connected. You can have the best processes, the best tools, but if the data in those tools is bad, then you're also not going to have a great time because, let's say you want to look up the latest status of a shipment and it's not there, you can't do anything about it, right? Or, if you want to price on historical lanes, right? And say like, hey, give me the rate for the last 5 times we did this shipment. Well, if your data quality, like, let's say you had a lot of, accessorials in some of those shipments and it's not properly tracked in the TMS, well, then it's not going to be great data for you to tap into if you provide the next rate on that lane. So yeah, it's again something that people have heard many times, right? Garbage in, garbage out. But it's especially true if you're leveraging AI systems that are not inherently doing anything on their own, but they're just tapping into existing infrastructure, and they're just gonna say like, whatever's in there, I assume it's true, right? And if it's not true, well, how would I know? Right? So really, it's also something where we see this a lot as a trend, where it's like, hey, if our operations people are saving an hour a day, what are they doing with that time? And we're seeing that actually being reallocated to improving the data quality and making sure that the TMS is up to date and has proper information in there. And that's often how they also reallocate those resources.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Very cool. So summary-wise, there were 7 points. Number 1, no pain, no gain. Number 2, lack of volume. 3, lack of ownership. 4, lack of standardization. 5, missing tools. 6, poor stack / difficult integration. And 7, poor data quality. And we've gotten some good comments here. People are saying this is very insightful. Sammy's also wondering if we're going to be circulating the deck. I'm sure we could send it over to Sammy if he wants us to. So, and then we have a couple. We have a question here as well at the end.
I have a question, Tilo. Which of these do you think is like, are these rank ordered in like
Sort of.
prevalence? Or okay, all right, cool. So you think number 1 is the most
I
important?
think it's like a little bit like peeling the layers, right? If you don't
Yeah.
have a pain, none of this matters. If you don't have volume, none of this matters. If
Yeah,
you don't,
sure.
Ownership is something that you can easily figure out most of the times, but the last 4 are sort of all connected, right? Do you have the processes, the tools? Do you have good tools, right? And do you have good data? So the last 4 are sort of the flavor of all of the same, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because I feel like this is a super good thing to lead with for you all, I think, because folks are, used to just being heavily sold this stuff. And I feel like I've heard a lot of people kind of have buyer's remorse about stuff that they've purchased without really understanding clearly what it's actually going to take for them to get something out of it. And it stinks when that happens because maybe the vendor got paid, but like that customer is going to churn. They might not renew, and you've put a sour taste in their mouth, and it kind of makes all the other providers kind of get lumped in and have a bad image, maybe. Like, because if you go around and peddle AI, you're like, oh, that's a buzzword. What does that even mean? So
exactly.
it's interesting.
We've been in AI for quite some time, so we're looking at this. On the one hand, it's great that it's top of mind right now and everybody wants to do something with it. When we started, that wasn't the case. We had to explain to people why it's valuable. But nowadays, it's very overwhelming, right? Because you have so many new players moving into the space and promising all sorts of things, right? While we heard multiple times from people that are now happy customers saying, hey, we tried this with 2 other vendors and it failed, and we're very hesitant to try it a 3rd time. And we tell them, well, you know what? Let's structure the whole thing in a way where you try this out first. You do like a proof of concept, a pilot of some sort, right? So you have that, hard criteria that you need to make sure that everything works before you pull the trigger on a more long-term contract. So we're structuring a lot of these deals that way just because it aligns us with our customer. And it just also incentivizes us to move quickly and make sure that the solution is working, right? And at the same time, we're also asking them to be ready to adopt, right? If we see these red flags in the evaluation process, we're just going to tell them honestly, if you haven't figured that out, it doesn't make sense, right? Let's talk in 3 months if you figure this out, and then let's move forward there.
And customers appreciate that, or like companies appreciate that when you're telling them like, if you fix this, like we could, work with you all, but like you're not just going to take any customer essentially, and then have those like buyers, like have them feeling that the buyer's remorse. So that's good. Okay, next section, we're going to be identifying, quantifying, and how to prioritize automation opportunities. Thilo, a little bit about this section.
Yeah, sure. So let's say, right, all of those 7 reasons don't apply to you anymore, and you have everything in place, you have good tools, you have good data, you have a lot of volume, you have a real pain, right? Then what, right? You might have 4 or 5 potential use cases that you want to get into, but a lot of people are overwhelmed and they don't know where to start, right? They don't know how difficult is it actually to get something up and running, what will be the ROI on this case, on that case. If we ask them, they even don't know how many emails of which type they're getting, for example, right? They don't know how many track and trace requests they're getting. They don't know how many spot quote requests they're getting. How many of those are actually quotable according to, where they have capacity or where they have, equipment types that work.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know, right? You would have to read every single email from the last month to get an understanding about that. The only thing you know is how many shipments make it into the TMS and eventually get booked. So we did that exercise with a lot of people manually in the past by telling them, hey, just give us an export, sign an NDA, give us an export of your data or of your emails from the last month. We're going to run it through. We're going to check, for whatever is interesting to you. And then we're going to stack rank those use cases for you. And we're going to start with the ones that have a high impact and are easy to implement and less risky maybe than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have something that gives you a $10,000 monthly return and is implementable in 3 weeks or so, right? And at the same time, it's not very risky versus something that's high risk and takes some time to implement, but then only gives you $4,000 return. Well, you know where to start, right? So we're trying to show to people how to kind of assess that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also gonna hint a little bit at the way we're productizing this right now. So what you see in the background is an illustration of our control tower, is what we're calling it, which is basically tapping into people's inboxes to uncover those insights. So long story short, how do you go about this? Well, first of all, again, topic of volume. How frequent is the task that you're looking to automate actually occurring, right? How many of those types of requests are you getting via email, or how many, if you're looking at phone AI, right? How many phone calls are you taking that are of this sort, right? If you're asking for a status update of a driver, might take 5 minutes to do. How many times do you do that? 100 times a week?
Are there tasks? Like you have the tracking task, you have, I guess, quote load, sending a quote task. Like how many tasks overall in the brokerage do you see?
So I think when we do this exploration with, especially also with bigger companies, where we just talk about all of the things that are possible, I would say it's somewhere around 4 to 6 major use cases. Yeah, I would say maybe like 5 on average.
Okay.
So it's easy things like collecting documents that people are asking for, or answering track and trace requests, or order entry is a big one, right? Where people tell us, and volume is also more nuanced, right? You might do 10,000 loads a month, but then if 95% of those loads are entered via EDI, you don't actually have a problem, right? You only have 500 loads maybe coming via email. On the other hand, someone doing 2,000 loads, but 95% of those coming in by email might have a bigger problem, even though they're just doing 20% of the loads that you're doing. Yeah.
Do you think like, I'm just curious, like when you do that exercise you outlined with folks, you go through their inboxes, you analyze their emails based upon what they're interested in seeing. Like, are people generally like surprised about how things break out, like what the numbers actually are?
Yeah, 100%. Because a lot of the decision making in that regard, where it's like, hey, should we build up more capacity here or there, right? It's anecdotal evidence. It's asking your team, asking your customers, running surveys, stuff like that, or just going into the inbox and scrolling through it a little bit, but you don't get the full picture, right? So actually, when we do these exercises, it's a lot of like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, right? Oh, can we break this down by equipment type? Can we break this down by pickup state? Right? So really going deep into those things, and then uncovering also things that you didn't know, inefficiencies that you didn't know about, that are not solved with automation, right? It's more like, oh, we actually have a white spot here in this part of our business, and we didn't know about it because how, right? Like, I can't read every single email and know about it.
It's interesting how much value there is in, like, I think a lot of people associate the AI like use case with like auto quoting, responding to track and trace, that sort of stuff. But it's like, there's a lot of interesting stuff that you can do just in the analysis of like how you're operating or what's going on. You know what I mean? Because there's your email inbox is basically just this giant unstructured data warehouse, right? And it's just impossible to standardize that, really. And now it is, which is just like a super powerful thing.
Yeah. One of our advisors recently called the inbox the shadow TMS to a degree, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that's in the TMS has a lot more story to it in email before it actually enters there.
Totally. Yeah, and tying that all together is super interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be big. I mean, it's already big, but it's going to only get more and more important. So that's cool.
Yeah. So frequency, volume, right? How often does it occur? And then obviously, how long does it take a human to do this task? Is it a 1-minute task, 5-minute task, 10-minute task? And then how much does that person earn per minute, right? So if you pay an ops person 50K a year in the US or 60K, I don't know, then you already have, something like 30 to 40 cents every single minute they're working, right? And let me tell you, not everyone is sitting there waiting for emails to come in and speed run them into the TMS, right? That's not how people are operating. So so you can look at that, and then also obviously assess to what degree can you automate that? Is it something super simple and uniform where it's always the same stuff? And you know that 90% of the cases follow the same pattern, so you can just set up the automation and let it run? Or is it something where the AI maybe does 50% of the work, and someone still needs to review stuff and put additional info in, or only a certain chunk of those cases are fully automatable? That's what you need to assess, right? Because it could be somewhere between 20% automation degree and 95% automation degree, and it makes a huge difference, right? And then obviously, how difficult is it to set all that up, right? Which is more a question of how complex is the workflow, the process, and how is your tooling landscape and your internal abilities to do these kinds of things. So if you put it all together and then you do that with all of the 4, 5, 6 different use cases you have in mind, you should have some sort of scoring of saying, okay, this happens very often, it takes a decent amount of time, it's done by highly paid people, it has a high automation degree, and it's not that hard to implement, right? Versus all of the other ones that rank lower. And that's how we're assessing it also with customers.
Okay. And now I know we have some case studies coming up. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in showing real examples. And then go ahead.
Yeah. So like this exercise that I just described, we're now productizing that, and we're calling this control tower. So it's basically just connecting all of the inboxes, telling the system what you want to learn about it, and then we're going to run that on the last month of those emails in the inbox, and then give those insights, and then you can start from there and make better decisions about what you actually want to automate or not.
Okay. And if they want to learn more, they could go to levity.ai/control-tower and request access. And now a couple case studies, if I'm not mistaken.
Can I just compliment you guys on that like landing page? That's like a vibe, dude. I love that. I think it looks great.
Yeah, it looks really
nice. You guys are pretty locked in over there from a design standpoint.
It's we have a great designer. Shout out to Sophia. She's building all of these pages. That control tower thing, by the way, and all of the images in this presentation are all AI generated.
I figured. That's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
So this is a real case from one of our customers. It's actually very, very simple, and yet they are saving $6,000 every month. So in their case, it's literally just shippers asking them for status updates via email, saying, "Hey, where's this shipment? Can you give me the latest update?" Right? And this happens 5,000 times every single month, right? Sometimes multiple times for the same shipment, and people are spending between 3 and 5 minutes every single time that happens. So we're calculating that the hourly rate was about $20, and the automation degree for the cases that we saw, we just did like we picked like I think 200 of those, reviewed them, said, okay, this fits the pattern, right? And then 90% of those could be easily automatable. And yeah, then if you take these 20,000 minutes that are spent every month times 33 cents per minute times 0.9, you end up with about 6K per month that you can save, right? So if your automation solution is somewhere between, I don't know, 2 and 2.5K, then you make quite a bit of ROI on that. And the solution is actually quite simple, right? I laid it out here. It's not exactly how this looks like for the customer, but roughly. We're tapping into the Outlook inbox. We're detecting, hey, this is this sort of request. We're then extracting the information about the load to then match it in the TMS. And then either the latest update is it's less than 2 hours ago, then we're just going to report that back to the shipper right away. If it's more than 2 hours ago, we're going to flag it for someone to get the latest info. But then, there's also more after that, right? Once you have that basic automation, you might also want to add the part where you get the latest update, for example.
Okay, so you could also add that in there. Like, let's say, like, you get a shipper emails you, but you haven't tracked it in, let's say, like a few weeks, or not a few hours. You could also integrate it to where Levity will get the update, receive it, and then would it also update the TMS at the same time? Like,
exactly. So it's usually going both ways, right? People either start with shipper communication side with us, or they start with the carrier communication side. Both is possible, and we can sit sort of in between the inboxes and the TMS.
Okay, very neat. Okay, so that was the first example, and this is still the first example.
This is sorry, it should be 2. That's a typo. Yeah, so just another very common one, right? Order entry. In this case, the broker is getting about 40% of the shipments in via email, and the rest is coming via EDI. But the email ones are, way higher in cost per load, because people are sitting there 8 minutes on average building those loads in the TMS, right? Which is insane if you think about it. And in their case, it was about 3,400 per month, 8 minutes per load, $25 hourly rate. And in their case, it was very, very straightforward. 95% automation degree makes $10,000 a month, right? And that's the way you need to kind of look at all of these potential use cases and calculate, okay, what is actually my savings rate here? And then also, what do I do with all those time savings, like, improving my data quality or winning new customers, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So, all right, I think that's all the way till the Q&A section. Anything to add to the last slide before we go into Q&A? Reed or Thilo?
I would just say it's cool. It's interesting to think about it from like a cost savings and like extract. Like, I just think it's an interesting way to calculate it. I do. Do you find that like way of putting it hits home for folks? Like, is that like an eye-opening thing to go through, that sort of analysis?
Yeah. I mean, it's just one part of the equation, of course, right? Because there are all sorts of secondary effects to doing this, right? Because if you have better visibility, you will be able to identify at-risk customers more easily, right? And work against that. Overall, you're providing a better customer experience by being faster. Your attrition rates are going to be lower, because if people are spending 10-15% of their time on this very stupid work sometimes, right? We've seen very high attrition rates in operations where people just said, yeah, I don't want to work in this job anymore because it's so draining. If you take that work away, your people might stay longer, and that also has a big effect. And it makes you more elastic, so to say, to the movements of the market, right? If market goes up, you're not hiring 15 more people, you're just dialing up on the software, right? And same if it goes down. So that makes you way more flexible. And then there are also secondary effects in certain use cases, like quoting, for example, where if you reply in a minute instead of 5, your win rate will likely also go up.
Yeah, no, That's cool, man. I mean, I built loads for a long time. A lot of time spent building loads, a lot of time doing all this stuff, giving quotes, receiving quotes, asking for quotes. I mean, man, it's just I don't even know how many hours I spent doing that. And to think that it's all like could be done automatically now. I mean, that's like it frees people up. I mean, you could just talk through all the ways you free those folks up to go do stuff, go do more higher value tasks. Right. And that makes their job probably a little more enjoyable, a little less monotonous because they get to go do, the fun stuff, try to win some business versus, sitting around keying stuff into a TMS. It's like, that's great.
And we see a lot of companies, also outsourcing these kinds of things to, BPO providers in Mexico or generally South America. And there's also a right for these services to exist. But I think there's also a good chunk of things that these people are doing. They might not be happy with that one, right? If you're sitting there all day long and all you're doing is typing data from one place into another on email.
Yeah, it's tough.
I don't think that's very enjoyable, to be honest.
No. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Paul, would you have met the threshold requirement from a load standpoint, from a volume standpoint, to be a Levity customer for Bang Bang Freight, or no?
For Bang Bang Freight, no. I think the most loads we ever did was probably like we probably had 5 loads a week. I think the first month we did like 20 loads. Maybe it was 30 loads. I don't know. That was like, yeah. It was a small operation, and we were dealing with like an Amish shipper. It was actually like one Amish farm from Northwest Ohio, and like the guy, he worked on an iPad. I never talked to him on like before, like over a phone, because he doesn't even have a phone number. And he would just reply like with like one-worded replies like in an email. So yeah, and that wouldn't have worked probably for Levity because there was like nothing to read besides like yes or no replies. But,
I mean, I'm just curious. Like anyone who's talked to, that's a perfect example of a shipper being very terse and not giving a lot of detail, right? And you get drivers and carriers doing the exact same thing. Like you're obviously these tools are only as good as what's coming into them, like data standpoint. So like how does that play out? Like how do you see? Yeah, I mean, obviously that affects the utility of your tool is the data going into it. So like talk about that.
100%. And in this case, you don't even have control over it, right? You can control your internal data, but you cannot control what the shipper is sending you. And they're not going to be pleased if you have some sort of bot asking them, can you please provide the full address? And that's not going to be a great experience, especially if you know what's needed, right? So there's 2 options for this, and another thing there. So first option, right? You can tell from the context, right? So if someone is shipping fresh fruit, you know what type of equipment you need for that, right? Even if they don't explicitly state what truck they want, you can tell that from the context. So that part is already figured out by AI, right? So it will be able to determine that information from the context. The other thing is you might have information that is not explicitly stated, but you can tell from the context of the email, but you can tell from other sources, right? Like if the shipper is contacting you and they're always shipping things from the same place, right, into some destination, they might only tell you the destination, but not the origin, right? So you would know because you've been working with them, but they're not telling you every single time in the email. So for these cases, you can basically build up other data sources or basically knowledge sources to say like, hey, we have this customer, they're always shipping from here, or this is where you need to tap to get that info, and then you're filling in the blanks in that way. But then you won't be able to solve every single exception there is, right? And that's also something that people need to be aware of. It's not like 100% human or 100% automation or AI, right? It's somewhere in between. And in some cases, we have customers that only automate 20, 30% of the things coming in. but it's still a positive ROI for them because the volume is so high, right? And all of the other stuff is still taken care of by humans, but you take a lot of the stuff off the plate as just very straight, very, without much ambiguity about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We have a
Question in the
couple
chat.
questions. Yeah, so Chad asked, how do you calculate what the cost per load will be to enhance workflow with AI more focused on track and trace?
Yeah, I don't know when that came in and whether it was answered then in the
That was
later.
11:15, so it was
Yeah,
like
it was early.
early on, I guess. Yeah, but if you have like any, I don't know, specific points.
Yeah,
on that.
just really looking at the whole life cycle of a load, right? Just from a quote request coming in to quoting it, to building it, to tracking it, to documentation later on. The whole life cycle, you always have these manual human touch points with things that are going on, and you need to really get an understanding for what are people spending the most time on, right? And also, interesting learning that we got from customers is you need to be aware that it might not be evenly distributed across your customers, right? You might have a customer that is very low margin because, I don't know, they don't have much money themselves and they're always trying to get the best price, but maybe they're a good logo, so you're keeping them. And then you realize, oh, I'm not making a lot of margin with that customer, even if their volume is high. At the same time, they're pestering me with emails all the time. They're calling my people. And now if I calculate that, I realize, oh, wait, I'm actually losing money on that customer, right? And I might want to fire them. So you really need to get an understanding of what is causing that operational cost, because you can look at it on an aggregate level and say, oh, we're moving this many loads and on average people are spending this much time. But it might be that it's happening with just 10, 15% of your customers and the rest is more like automated.
Makes sense.
Next question was from Sammy. Sammy was asking if we're going to be circulating a deck. Sammy, if you're listening right now, if you email Thilo, email's right here. I'm sure he'll send it to you. Or you could also reach out to us. We'll send it to you as well. Then we have a question from Ray Brady. Do you have any customers that have utilized your product for use in the finance department, or is it only geared towards operations?
It's not only geared towards operations, has been our focus with regards to what we go out and for and who we contact and who we work with. Once we get started with companies, usually when they see the first concept working and they realize, okay, it's literally just email coming in, understanding what's coming in, getting something out, pushing it somewhere, basic steps, right? It's not built for a specific type of function or use case. It's very much modular. So in finance or, let's say document related tasks, we see this also quite a lot, right? When just simple things like getting invoices, processing invoices, right? Just improving on your cash conversion cycle, for example, right? Those kinds of things are also very important. We haven't gone into it too much yet, but the product is definitely capable also to help with some of those use cases.
Okay. And then Mario is wondering if you integrate with DAT or TruckStop.
Of course.
How does that integration work? Is it like for posting loads? Like I mean, obviously for posting loads, but like if you could tell us a little bit.
Mostly pulling rates from DAT rate view, for example.
Okay, got it. So it wouldn't have anything to be doing with actually posting trucks.
No, not right now. We haven't seen that. If that requirement comes up more often, we might look into it. But right now, it's mostly about pulling rates.
Okay, got it. And same with TruckStop, I imagine. Okay, very cool. All right. So those were the questions. We did have someone share here. I'm an expert in these questions. I never replied. What's these?
Damn, you teed him up, and he didn't do it. What the heck?
Yeah, but
he didn't deliver.
Anthony found this to be very insightful, as did I. This is great. Great work, Thilo, in presenting all the information and making it educational and insightful. So appreciate that. Mario actually replied to that. I would love to post a load in the load board. In a way, like I do see like the use case there, just like because posting loads is so time consuming. So
Yeah.
if you like, if a customer sends a load, be also like, oh, post this like immediately on DAT.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people do that anyway, no matter what, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the TMSs are also quite well integrated with
right.
DAT and Truckstop and other load boards. So yeah, we haven't seen it come up that many times yet. That is a requirement of the automation we're working for customers.
Got it. Awesome. Very, very cool. Well then, I guess that's a wrap for today's webinar. 7 reasons why you should not buy AI software for your brokerage. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any other questions or you want to reach out to Thilo, his email is right here on the slide, thilo@levity.ai. Once again, Thilo, thank you so much for joining us. And Reed, it's very insightful, and wishing you all a wonderful day.
Thanks, Thilo. This is great.
And
Are you trying to win more loads while also lowering your cost per load? Do the conventional methods like hiring a bunch of grads and filling them with nicotine pouches and energy drinks not work? Well, then you should seriously consider investing into some automation technology like Levity to get rid of your repetitive admin work and make your sales go gangbusters. Back in the day of American backhaulers, everybody was used to doing business with a phone, pen, and paper. By now, we at least have email. Isn't that great? But the world has changed, and in this new world, everyone eventually needs to adapt or risk going out of business. So how is it possible that we have this while you're still working like that? Everybody is talking about AI these days, but nobody really knows what it actually means or how to use it for something tangible. We're here to change that. Imagine a world where your inbox is your ally, not your enemy. Levity seamlessly connects to your inbox, TMS, CRM, and other systems, analyzing incoming emails and attachments. It classifies them, extracts critical information, and automates tasks like providing instant spot quotes to shippers or answering track and trace requests. No more copy-pasting, no more manual data entry, just pure, unadulterated efficiency. We're going to take your productivity to the next level. Anyways, if you're watching this video and were one of the lucky people that got one of these limited edition masterpieces, congratulations! But even if not, don't worry. Just book a 30-minute meeting with us so we can demonstrate how Levity can help you win more business and lower your cost per load. And you'll get one of the 100 remaining gongs, but you gotta act fast. And here's the kicker, our Gong Big or Gong Home offer. If you decide to become a customer, I'm hereby promising you to get your large version of our gongs with your company logo and personally delivered to your office. Put that gong down. Gongs are for closers only. You think I'm fucking with you? I'm not fucking with you.